Hello and welcome to RC Vida. This is our first ever YouTube channel, so I do apologise for all the crimes you're about to witness. And today we're going to start to rebuild my Baja 5B SS Chongyang 26cc Fuelie engine. As you can see, it's in a bit of a state. It got left after being driven into some seawater. So basically it really needs a full rebuild. We're going to tear it down and see what's what. Without further ado, let's get going. Let's take the engine cover off here. As you can see, the linkage is still attached to the carburetor. The carburetor is seized and that arm is stuck onto it. Now I'm pointing at the clutch carrier. I've managed to get out the two machine screws at the top, but these countersunk machines at the bottom, they will need drilling out, I'm afraid, because they are stripped. The flywheel turns nice and smoothly, and from what I can see inside the engine it seems okay. But as you can see, the spark plug looks horrendous. You know, a little look over, put it down on the desk, and we'll see what's got. The first thing we need to do is we need to try and drill these holes out, and this is where I make my first health and safety mistake. And I would obviously have to tell you, do as I say, not as I do. I've got my box of bits out. I need to really organise all this sort of stuff going forward if we're going to be making more of these videos and getting better and better in each time. I just really wanted to check to make sure that, in fact, now that I'd sprayed some ease on it and took it inside, just try one last time before I had to get the drill out, but no luck whatsoever. I thought I had it there, but no such luck, no such luck. So it's time to get the drill out. Now, the drill is good. The drill bits I had were extremely blunt, and I need to just basically give a bit of a warning here. Don't do what I did. Always make sure you have whatever you're drilling in a vise. Keep your hands away from it, drill away from you, do everything you can to keep yourself safe. I'm an idiot. Cue the drilling montage. And there we have it. I've drilled into my hand. Absolute schoolboy error. What an idiot. What a total tool. As I said, do not do this how I've done it. Do it safely. Look after yourselves. And there we have it. We can take the clutch carrier off. With the clutch carrier off, you can access the clutch drum, which the shoes engage against to give you your drive. That bearing looks quite good. Always best to just check all the bearings when you're disassembling everything, so you can make a good idea of what you're going to need to replace. That there, I pulled out the piston stopper, which you need, and your flywheel puller, which you need for both the clutch carrier, not the carrier, for the clutch spinner and also the flywheel, to get them out. For these bolts that are holding on the clutch shoes, I did hold on to the flywheel to get the first one off. The second one I could not budge it at all. So in order to get this second bolt out, I used the glow plug accessory that came with the kit to hold on to the flywheel, so I have some leverage against the bolt to break it out. Pop, and there she goes. Once those bolts are out, you can remove the clutch shoes. You can see that it's got a red spring. That's an 8000 RPM spring, so it starts to engage at 8000 RPM. It's totally engaged by 10,000 RPM. Now, to get the clutch shoe holder, or clutch spinner sometimes it's called, you need to remove the middle hex bolt, and then you will, for some reason to my surprise, even though I've done this before, realise you will need to attach your flywheel puller. When you attach your flywheel puller, just 2 bolts in each of the threaded sides where you removed your bolts that hold the clutch shoes on. You need to make sure your threads get well down in there. You don't only want to screw them in a couple of threads, because then you might strip them, because these things are on tight. Then when you've done that, 13mm nut. Again, use some sort of leverage at this point. I didn't want to use the piston stopper just because these things can be quite tight, and then it will just pop off. As you can see here, you can start to see it slowly start to pull away before it finally gives way and comes off completely. There we go. I had a little bit of trouble now removing the flywheel puller from the clutch spinner. Just use some long nose pliers to hold the 2 bolts, and then that gave me enough leverage to remove it. The main clutch housing is held on by just 4 bolts inside, but for the moment we're going to leave that on because this link is really getting on my nerves. So we're going to remove the carb now. Just 2 really long bolts that go through the filter holder, the carb adapter block, right into the cylinder head. The carb comes away quite nicely. You can see the filter assembly is separate. Now this carb, there's a gasket between it and the adapter block, but as I'm sort of pointing in here, you can't really see, but there is some rust inside, and look, you cannot move the actual throttle butterfly at all. It's completely toast. Maybe a rebuild would help, but I do have another carb to go straight on this. The carburetor mounting block just comes off with another 2 screws. Really simple. Now we're left with what's really quite a bare engine. Clutch carrier, both sides of the flywheel, obviously piston and crank and con rod assembly, and the spark plug. The next thing to take off is the clutch housing. Just 4 bolts and the clutch housing comes off. Now it did seem to be stuck on there quite well. I'm not sure if this is just because of the heat cycles it went through, or whether this is some kind of sort of metal oxidization reaction because of the salt water. It took a little bit of effort to get off, but a few taps and away it came. The next item really is to take off the flywheel. We will need a piston stopper for this. I was expecting that spark plug to be a lot tighter than that, but it was really loose, so we just unthread that and then thread the piston stopper in. So then you've got something that will stop the flywheel in order for you to be able to get some leverage and undo the nut on the end. Once the nut is off, you will need to use the flywheel puller to get the flywheel off from the crank. Use it exactly the same as last time. Make sure the 2 outer bolts are threaded in a decent way. One thing to note when you take the flywheel off, there is a little key in the crankshaft. This ensures the flywheel will only go on in one position to make sure it's in time correctly with the ignition coil. Don't lose the key. Alright, so now it's time to take the head of the engine off. This is a 2-bolt head. If any of you see anything referring to 2-bolt or 4-bolt, it's exactly kind of how it sounds. A 2-bolt has 2 bolts in the head, 4 bolts have 4 bolts in the head. Of course, for more higher powered engines, they do obviously recommend 4 bolts, but this is the standard 26cc Fuelie engine that comes with the HPI 5BSS kit, made by Chongyang, CY for short. It really is just undo the 2 bolts. It will be in there quite tight, especially after a lot of thermal expansion and contraction from use, and then it will just pull off. These bolts are going to need to be replaced though, because they're just rusty. Really got battered this when I used it on the beach and got covered it in salt water. The worst thing I did though was I left it. I didn't clean it all off. If I'd have just rinsed it all off, it would have been totally fine. It's amazing that inside the engine looks totally fine. No damage at all to the piston or inside the cylinder. You will need to replace all the gaskets inside the engine, which you can see here. You're only looking £5 to £10, $10, $15 if you're in the US. Not a great deal of money at all. Next up, just remove the 4 bolts that join both sides of the crank together, and then you can pull it apart, and that is basically your engine totally tore down. Pull this apart. I can see that one side of the crank is absolutely beautiful, but then I can't quite get this side out. It should really push out quite easily, but it doesn't. When it does pop out, I can see rust in there. Oh no. This to me really is the reason why I decided to tear down this engine, just in case there was something lurking in there. It did all need a clean. But as you can see, one side of the crankcase, bearing turns around lovely, other side it gets stuck. There is rust in that side, and you can see the rust on the crankshaft too. I'm going to replace the clutch carrier with the standard clutch carrier, just because I'm not going to take this on the beach again, maybe in the very distant future. And here you can just see a pair of new bearings that I'm going to swap into those crankcases, which is going to be in the next video. Thank you very much for watching my first ever YouTube video. Hopefully I better make more. Hopefully you liked this, and if you did like it, could you please give it a thumbs up, comment down below what you think I did well, what you think I did wrong, and also any kind of things you'd like to see me tear down. I've got electric, I've got nitro, we've got this petrol. As you can see on the screen now, that is the 5BSS that I built from new, from a kit, and that is the state it is in, and we are going to completely rebuild this. So please join me, tell others, and let's rebuild this together. Thank you very much. Goodbye.